Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be reading Sutra 3. Okay. Tada drashtu svarupe vastanam. Tada drashtu svarupe vastanam. Then of Seer in his own form, or essential and fundamental nature, establishment. Then the Seer is established in his own essential and fundamental nature. This sutra points out in a general way what happens when all the modifications of the mind at all levels have been completely inhibited. The Seer is established in his svarupa, or in other words, attains self-realization. We cannot know what this state of self-realization is as long as we are involved in the play of chittavrittis. It can only be realized from within and not comprehended from without. Even the partial and superficial comprehension, which we can obtain under our present limitations by means of study and reflection, is possible only after we have mastered the whole theory and technique of yoga outlined in this treatise. The higher states of consciousness which unfold in the state of Samadhi, and which are referred to in Section 1, the Samadhipada 44 to 45, are called Ratambhara, or truth right bearing. In their light, the yogi can know the truth underlying all things in manifestation, but he can know the truth in this way of only those things which are part of drishyam, the seen, not of the drasta, or the seer. So drishyam is the seen, drashta is the seer. For this, he has to practice nirbija samadhi. Let's read that one again. But he can know the truth in this way of only those things which are part of the seen, not of the seer. For this, he has to practice nirbija samadhi. Nirbija samadhi is samadhi without the seed, right? Which we're going to talk more about in section Samadhipada Sutra 51. Okay, so let's go to 44 and 45 so we can see what he's talking about. Okay. That's 43, 44. So he says, the higher states of consciousness which unfold in the state of Samadhi and which are referred to in 44 and 45 are called Ratambhara, or truth right bearing. So 44 says, well, this one's more difficult to pronounce, so I'm not even going to try it. By this, even alone itself, Samadhi involving vikara, or reflection, Samadhi not involving vikara, and Samadhi involving still more subtle objects described or explained. By this, what has been said in the two previous sutras, Samadhis of savichara or savikara, nirvichara or nirvikara, and subtler stages have also been explained. Okay, so that's 44. So it's just explaining those states. And then 45 is Sukshma Visayatvam Kalinga Pari Avasanam. The state of Samadhi concerned with subtle objects and the last stage of the gunas, extending up to. The province of Samadhi concerned with subtle objects extends up to the alinga stage of the gunas. Okay, cool. So let's now go back, and now we're going to read 4. Vritti svarupyam ittaratra. Vritti svarupyam ittaratra. Vritti svarupyam ittaratra. With modifications of the mind, identification, assimilation, elsewhere, in other states. In other states, there is assimilation of the seer with the modifications of the mind. Yeah. When the chittavrittis are not in the state of nirodha and the drashta is not established in his svarupa, he is assimilated with the particular vritti which happens to occupy the field of his consciousness for the moment. So we become involved and identified with what's going on in our mind, right? A simile will perhaps help the student to understand this assimilation of consciousness with the transformation of the mind. Let him imagine a lighted electric bulb suspended in a tank full of limpid water. If the water is churned violently by some mechanical contrivance, it will make all kinds of patterns in three-dimensional around the bulb, these patterns being illuminated by the light from the bulb and changing from moment to moment. But what about the bulb itself? It will disappear from view, all the light emanating from it being assimilated with or lost in the surrounding water. Now let him imagine the churning of water slowing down gradually until the water becomes perfectly still. As the three-dimensional patterns begin to subside, gradually the electric bulb gradually emerges into view, and when the water is quite at rest, the bulb alone is seen. This simile illustrates in a rather crude way both the assimilation of the consciousness of the Purusha with the modification of the mind, and its reversion to its own unmodified state when the mind comes to rest. The mind may come to rest either through para vairagya, developed by Ishvara Pranidhana, or through the practice of Samadhi. The result in both cases is the same: enlightenment and liberation. This sutra, like the previous one, is meant to answer only in a general way the question, what happens to the Purusha when he is not established in his Svarupa? Its full significance can be understood only after the whole book has been studied thoroughly and the various aspects of the subject understood adequately. Okay, so I'm going to read the next one too. So we're doing 3 today. Sutra number 5. Vrittaya, Panchataya, Klishta. Vrittaya, Panchataya, Klishta. Plural of modes, modifications or functionings of the mind, 5-fold, of 5 kinds, painful and not painful. The modifications of the mind are 5-fold and are painful or not painful. After indicating the essential nature of yogic technique, the author then proceeds to classify the vrittis. He classifies them in 2 ways. Firstly, in relationship to our feelings, whether they are painful, pleasurable, or neutral in their character. And secondly, according to the nature of the pratyaya, which is produced in our consciousness. Let us consider first the reaction of these vrittis on our feelings. This reaction, according to Patanjali, is either painful or not painful. This will appear to a superficial student a rather strange way of classifying the mental modifications. Of course, there are certain modifications which are of a neutral character. For instance, they do not produce any pleasurable or painful reaction in our mind. When, for example, we notice a tree while walking, it is a mere sensuous perception which does not arouse any pleasurable or painful feeling in us. The vast majority of our sensuous perceptions, which result in the modification of the mind, are of this neutral character. They have been classified as not painful. But there are other modifications of the mind which do arouse a pleasurable, painful feeling within us. For example, when we taste some palatable article of food, or see a beautiful sunset, or smell a rose, there is a distinct feeling of pleasure. On the other hand, when we see a horrible sight or hear a cry of anguish, the resulting transformation of the mind is definitely painful. Why has then Patanjali classified all such modifications of the mind which arose some feeling within us as painful? The reason for this is given in section 2, Sutra 15, in connection with the philosophy of kleshas, which we have mentioned before, and I talk about it in some of my videos. I talk about some of the kleshas, and I go into detail into the kleshas in my quantum creation course. It will suffice to mention here that according to the theory of kleshas upon which the yogic philosophy is based, all pleasurable and painful experiences are really painful to the people who have developed the faculty of discrimination and are not blinded by the illusions of the lower life. It is our ignorance caused by these illusions which makes us see pleasure in experiences which are a potential source of pain and therefore makes us run after those pleasures. If our inner eyes were open, we would see the potential pain hidden within these pleasures, and not only when the pain is present in an active form. We would then see the justification for classifying all experiences which involve our feelings and thus give rise to raga and dvesha as painful, says attachment and aversion. I made a whole video on attachment and aversion. As painful. This may appear to the student a rather pessimistic view of life, but let him withhold his judgment until he has studied the philosophy of kleshas in section 2. So we'll get to that. You can also watch the video I made on that. If all experiences involving our feelings are painful, then it is logical to classify the remaining experiences which are of a neutral character and do not affect our feelings as not painful. It will be seen, therefore, that the primary classification of chittavrittis as painful and not painful is not without reason, and from the yogic point of view, perfectly logical and reasonable. The other point of view from which the chittavrittis have been classified is the nature of the pratyaya produced in the chitta. The object of classifying them in this manner is to show that all of our experiences in the realm of the mind consist of mental modifications and nothing else. The control and complete suppression of these modifications, therefore, extinguishes our lower life completely and leads inevitably to the dawning of the higher consciousness. When classified in this manner, the vrittis or modifications are stated to be of 5 kinds, as shown in the next sutra. And because now we're at 6, and in the previous video, he referred to how we go into the next 6 to 11, I believe it is. So let's just talk about the 5 kinds of vrittis, all right? Right knowledge, wrong knowledge, fancy sleep, and memory. Right knowledge is based on direct cognition, inference, or testimony. Wrong knowledge is a false conception of a thing whose real form does not correspond to such a mistaken conception. An image conjured up by words without any substance behind it is fancy. That modification of the mind, which is based on the absence of any content in it, is sleep. And memory is not allowing an object which has been experienced to escape. And we will probably do all of those in the next video. Is there anything I want to go forward? Kleshas, section 2, 15. So let's go forward. Sadhanapada is. So the whole reason why I started reading the Yoga Sutras on these videos is because I had this idea in my mind. I'm organizing my thoughts around a talk on freedom, and that's a big topic. So I was kind of like, this is like way too much. And in my mind, I thought, for some reason, I haven't opened this book in decades, almost. I thought, open the Yoga Sutras, just open to any page, and there's going to be something there that's important. And this is the page I opened to, 225, and I went into Santosa. The second element of niyama is santosa, which is generally translated as contentment. It is necessary for the aspirant for the yogic life to cultivate contentment of the highest order, because without it, there is no possibility of keeping the mind in a condition of equilibrium. All right, let me, we're still in Sadhanapada. Oh no, Sadhanapada section 2, so we're looking for 15. That's 29. 21, 17, 16. Well, I have a marker there too. I wonder why I have a marker there. 15. To the people who have developed discrimination, all is misery on account of the pains resulting from change, anxiety, and tendencies, as also on account of the conflicts between the functioning of the gunas and the vrittis of the mind. If virtue and vice beget respectively pleasurable and painful experiences, the question may arise, why not adopt the virtuous life to ensure in time an uninterrupted series of pleasurable experiences and to eliminate completely all painful experiences? We'll get to that. Oh, I took it out and I wanted to leave it in there. 225. Okay. That's it for today. Thank you for joining me.